She's a conservative, and I'm liberal. And yet we've been friends for almost 40 years. Everyone says you shouldn't discuss politics, religion, or money. And we say that's exactly what friends should be talking about. Join us as we tackle the conversations you're having in your head, but are too scared to say out loud. Welcome to We've Got to Talk. Welcome, Jolene, and welcome, Bob Inglis. And I'll let Jolene introduce him.
We are so excited to have Bob Inglis with us today. He served 6 terms in the U.S. Congress representing the great state of South Carolina and is now the executive director of RepublicEN.org, which is a movement of conservatives who believe that climate change is real and that the free enterprise system can solve it. Bob sees climate change not as a partisan issue, but as a moral and economic opportunity. Welcome, Bob Inglis.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Who is Bob Inglis? I mean, we find it fascinating that, number one, that you were a 6-time Congress person. And then you are now this huge climate advocate with a platform. So can we talk about, first of all, how you got to this place? Where do you come from? Who are you, Bob Inglis?
Yeah, it does seem unusual, right?
Yeah,
to have a
it does.
conservative talking about climate change, because we all know it's a liberal cause. That's what I thought for my first 6 years in Congress. It's basically Al Gore was for it, I'm against it. Next question. Okay, pretty ignorant, but that's the way it was my first 6 years in Congress. Then I was out of Congress 6 years doing commercial real estate law again in Greenville, South Carolina, and had the opportunity to run for the same seat again in 2004. Our son, the eldest of our 5 kids, was just turned 18 that year, voting for the first time, came to me and said, "Dad, I'll vote for you, but you're going to clean up your act on the environment." His 4 sisters agreed, his mother agreed. New constituency, you got to respond to those people. They can change the locks on the doors to your house. So that was step 1 of a 3-step metamorphosis. Step 2 is going to Antarctica, the science committee, seeing the evidence in the ice core drillings. And then step 3, another science committee trip, and really a spiritual awakening at the Great Barrier Reef. Aussie climate scientist who I was snorkeling with, showing me the glories of the Great Barrier Reef, clearly worshiping God. And what he was showing me, it was clear that he wasn't worshiping the corals. He was worshiping the creator of the corals. I knew we shared a worldview before any words were spoken, because St. Francis of Assisi is quoted as saying, "Preach the gospel at all times. If necessary, use words." And so that's what Scott was doing, and he's now a very dear friend. And without the snorkels in our mouths, later he told me about conservation changes he's making in his life to love God and love people. People come after us. And so I got right and inspired. I wanted to be like Scott, loving God, loving people. So I came home and introduced the Raise Wages, Cut Carbon Act of 2009. And note to self, do not introduce carbon tax, even though it's revenue neutral, in midst of great recession, when you represent perhaps the reddest district or the reddest state of the nation. It will not go well, and it didn't go well at all. After 12 years in Congress, I got 29% of the vote in the Republican runoff that year. The other guy got the other 71% of the vote. So that's how I came to this, is from basically climate disregard, not so much climate denial, just climate disregard, is conscious disregard of it, to then, inspired by the love of my son and seeing the science and the love of friends like Scott Heron, turned into this guy that works on climate change.
Okay, so conservatives are going to ask, has your opinion changed on that climate is changing because of the natural phenomenon of this earth that God has given us, or is it something that man is doing with the carbon emissions? What do you say to those conservatives who need some clarification on that?
Yeah, I'd say, here's the good news. It's us. It's really good news. It's us. Therefore, we can fix it. We tried out an ad, a Facebook ad that I thought was going to be really great. Is basically, I looked up images for sinners in the hands of an angry God. And I got this thing, it looked like a guy preaching. It looked like he had a Bible in this hand. He was really giving it to him with this hand. It was actually a guy playing around in the city council chambers. But anyway, so we put clouds up in the top, with storm things. And it said, and then, this guy preaching, it says, we better hope it's human caused. It's basically what I thought would work, but it didn't work as an ad, by the way. I thought it was a really great ad, but
okay.
But yeah, it's good news. It's us, and we can fix it. If it weren't us, boy, we'd be hosed. I mean, this is really bad news.
Well, Bob, this is what I'm a little confused about. So when we did a bunch of research, and I was watching that documentary about big oil, which was fascinating, and I'll put that in the show notes, and you're in it. Looking at the history of this, and what I was that piqued my interest originally was that it seemed, and please correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert in this, but it seemed like in the 60s and 70s that it wasn't a partisan issue. It seemed that there were people that were concerned about it and people that weren't, but it wasn't a red thing or a blue thing. My takeaways were that Al Gore was really interested in it, and he then became the vice president, and then he didn't get elected. And so he made this like his absolute number one priority and would give talks. I happened to see one of his talks in New York a million years ago. And then he made the movie The Inconvenient Truth, which sort of solidified this, like, this is a liberal cause, y'all. Like, this is it. And you're not even allowed to think about it as an issue if you are a Republican. So that when you were in office originally, when did you start? What was your first term?
So I got elected
what year?
in 1992, the previous century, yeah.
Okay. And so at that point, you didn't really think about climate, or you were like, it's a liberal thing? Or what was that like? Like, I know that your son was a big eye-opener, but I'm curious, like, what happened?
Well, it was in a conservative district like the one I represented. It was already starting to be a little bit unacceptable. But if you look at it nationwide, actually, George H.W. Bush, who, of course, was losing in 1992 when I was first getting elected to the House, he actually said that, there's something about the White House effect, and how we're going to deal with this problem of climate change. So George H.W. Bush was on board. Then you get, over to really as far as 2008. And Republicans were still on board with solving climate change. John McCain, for example, was running for president, talking about climate change. And then Barack Obama got elected. He's a secret Muslim, non-American socialist, we said. He's none of those things. But anyhow, so... And then is also the Great Recession was starting. October of 2008, the wheels were coming off the financial system.
That's right.
And that's when it really went south on climate. Because before that, when I got reelected to Congress in 2004, I said to the district, Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, very conservative. Back then, one of the 6 in South Carolina. Now we've grown a lot. We've got 7 districts. So I said, this time around, Inglis 2.0, I'm going to be singularly focused on energy security. And that was the way we talked about climate, was energy security. And the district was basically, just look at the results. In the election of the primary of 2004, had 2 opponents. They shared 15% of the vote. Okay, that was a brag. If you did the math, that means I got 85% of the vote in that Republican runoff, which is pretty astounding, really. Then people thought, well, it's a little bit strange you're talking about this energy security and going over into climate change, but what the heck, Inglis, the economy's great. Go ahead and go for it. Then 06, still okay, but 08, wow, not so much anymore. People were worried about this month's paycheck, this month's mortgage payment. Their houses were underwater, financially, with the housing bubble and the financial crisis. And they basically said to me, Inglis, you seem to be focused on some slow-growing cancer, and we need a tourniquet over here. We are hemorrhaging. And so that's really when it happened. And
because in 2008, when you lost that primary to Trey Gowdy, is that his name?
2010, yeah.
2010, I'm sorry, 2010.
I survived in 2008 because the primary was before the Great Recession started, but then I couldn't survive the 10 primary.
In that film, he just denied climate altogether, right?
Yeah, very interesting. I remember we were at this big tent gathering in Spartanburg County, and I had 4 opponents. The first one, the local Christian talk radio host asked me a question. He says, "Is climate change real and human caused? And do you support a carbon tax?" Well, I had a terrible habit of answering questions, so I said yes and yes. Boo hiss comes the crowd.
That was
so my first opponent, she said, God has given us this wonderful oil, and when it's burned, it's a wonderful blessing to the world. And so that was her answer. The next guy said, well, this is just another place where Brother Bob has left us, making it a religious heresy, not just a political heresy.
Oh, wow.
And then the third guy, he came up with something, I don't know. But then the fourth guy, Trey Gowdy, came up with a particularly good political answer. I remember it. He says, inasmuch as it hadn't been proven to the satisfaction of the people I would represent, the answer is no, there's no human causation in climate change. I remember thinking, that's a really good political answer. Won't win you a Profile and Courage Award,
right.
But it is a particularly good political answer.
Okay, so all right, Bob, is it fair to say that you are trying to change this conversation then? You still have conservative values. You consider yourself a Republican and a conservative.
Yes, absolutely.
Just believes in climate, that we need to do something about climate change. You want to shift this conversation from a political one to an entrepreneurial one. I mean, is that fair to say?
Correct. And I think that this is the strong suit of conservatives. I'm a conservative. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the Constitution. I believe that my country has a role in the world. I believe that we should balance budgets. I believe that we should have the free enterprise system deliver innovation at speed and scale. I mean, and I believe people should be left in freedom to pursue their joys and their opportunities. I mean, that's what makes me a conservative. My party is not conservative at this point. It's a populist nationalist party, which is a long way from conservative. But we have this hope that my party, Republican Party, will eventually come back to itself and realize that, hey, you know what? Really, we got to come back to conservative principles. And so what we think this is a problem of economics that has an environmental consequence. And if you think about it, conservatives are the people that should be really good at economics, should be the ones that say, hey, yeah, what the problem here is we get to dump into the trash dump of the sky without paying a tipping fee. Wherever you live in America today, your county dump charges a tipping fee for trash haulers coming into that dump, and they weigh the trucks on the way in, and they pay based on the weight of the truck. That's a good thing, because the city has to build a new dump when this one's filled up, and they got to line it so that the stuff doesn't leach out into the river. That's a tipping fee. It works. And what we don't have is a tipping fee in the trash dump of the sky, so there's a lot of dumping. And so it's just a matter of fixing that economic problem. So I don't frustrate some of your listeners who may be econ majors or economists. All we talk about republican.org is this thing that economists would call internalizing negative externalities. It's bringing side effects, bringing accountability for the side effects of burning fossil fuel. It's just building them into the price of a product so that the marketplace can judge that product. And we think that's the key to solving this.
Do you think that part of it is language? Like the carbon tax just doesn't work? And if you would, I don't know, not to go back in time, like I just feel like that the left and the right, we get really locked into this language and it doesn't serve us.
The best I can come up with is a bumper sticker. Maybe you can help me out. Okay. Is the Untax. And then maybe we have people wondering, what is the untax? Well, let's untax your payroll income and let's tax pollution instead. You know, there's somebody working at a McDonald's near you right now, near me too. It may be her second or third job. She's paying 12.4% payroll tax on that job right now. 6.2 she sees on her paycheck in the FICA box, FICA, Fund Social Security. 6.2 she doesn't see that McDonald's is paying. Total is 12.4% tax. It really is a whoppingly regressive tax. It hurts poor people. And so reduce that tax. Put on a carbon tax instead. The carbon tax by itself would hurt a poor person too, because you put on a $30 per ton price on carbon dioxide at the mine, at the pipeline. The price of electricity in the average home goes up by $11 a month. The price of gasoline goes up in Greenville, South Carolina, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, or San Francisco by 30 cents a gallon. Bad for that person working at McDonald's. But if you cut the payroll tax at the same time you're doing that carbon tax, the Congressional Budget Office says the bottom 70% of Americans end up better off. It's only the top 30% that pay more. Big houses, heated pools, corporate jets. So you can actually make people better off with this untax. But here's the challenge. Trust me, I'm going to put on this new tax, and we're going to reduce this existing tax. Trust me? No.
Trust me, I'm from the government.
No,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. But here's what I say. In fact, I ran into it the other night at the Darlington County GOP meeting. You know, they were saying, no, we don't trust that. We can't trust that. And I said, well, okay, let's call up Charlie and apologize. Call up the King Charles and tell him we're very sorry what happened back there in 1776. The experiment, self-government, has failed. Please come back and rule over us, because we cannot decide that we want to untax income and put a tax on carbon dioxide instead. We can't do it. So, Charlie, will you please come back? Most of them they're not willing to make that call. I'm not either. So, free people can decide this.
Would there be then an issue with taking money from Social Security? I mean, is
Yes.
that the exchange?
Yeah, that it is a problem, except when you do a carbon tax, you broaden the base of taxation. So right now, a payroll tax caps out, FICA tax caps out at about $175,000 a year. So as you get to 175, the FICA tax drops off. So people that do real well stop paying FICA tax. I don't know, they could be already stopped at this point in the year. We're recording in May. If you do a broad-based carbon tax, then, billionaires would pay the whole year long because they fly on corporate jets. Well, fine. Pay for the carbon tax on the Jet A that goes into that jet. And so it broadens the base of taxation for Social Security. But let me not overstate that. It doesn't fix the problem of Social Security. Social Security is going broke. But it does broaden the base a little bit, make it a little bit better.
Bob, you were saying in other things that I've read and watched about you that we need a global buy-in. When you talked about that, I got super excited because I think we get really stuck in the weeds in the United States of like, well, I don't want to pay this, and it's not fair, this or that, and it's just it seems that sometimes conservatives or the red team might say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, and so nothing gets done, and
I think we say, why would we? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Quite
but
all right.
I think we, as a conservative, I would say, why does the United States have to bear the brunt of this if China and India aren't doing it because they're such bigger polluters?
Yeah.
You would say what, Bob?
Yeah, no, this is the current legitimate question that's asked right of center. Back when I was getting tossed out of Congress, it was aggressive disbelief about climate change. It was basically, I don't believe in climate change, you shouldn't either. That's gone away. I mean, there's still people that are arguing with thermometers, but they're getting fewer and fewer of those kind of people. Most people realize it's real. It's obviously real. But what they want to know is how you get the world in on this thing. It just can't be just us, Jolene, like you just said. So here's the exciting thing about this Untax. If you untax income here, payroll income, put the tax on carbon dioxide and said bottom 70% end up better off here. But then here's the really positive thing. You can apply that tax to imports coming from a country that doesn't have the same carbon tax. This would be a tariff, but it would not set off a tariff war because this is established a case law under the World Trade Organization that you can have a content tax basing the tax on the content of the stuff coming into your country. And this would be a carbon content tax. So we'd apply it to Chinese imports, for example. So there's a sheet of flat steel coming through the port of Seattle right now, let's say. They stole the technology from us. They manipulated their currency. They've dumped a lot into the trash dump of the sky. Somebody's lost his hands and his fingers or whatever. Here it comes, cheap Chinese steel. Okay, I'm a little bit sore about that because we make cleaner steel right here in South Carolina, if you can believe it. Steel, actually, we have some made in South Carolina. But here it comes, cheap Chinese steel. We apply our carbon tax. China objects in the World Trade Organization. They try it. They say, listen, impermissible tariff. We think they lose that case based on that content tax analysis. After they lose, 24 hours later, because they do reach consensus easily in China. Not a very fair government, not a very nice government, but doggone efficient. Dictatorships are that way. Very efficient way to run a country. Just you wouldn't want to live under one. But anyway, 24 hours later, they'd have the same carbon tax. Why? Well, they just paid in Seattle a carbon tax that's now on its way to Washington. If they'd collected it, the same tax inside China, the money would be in Beijing, and the sheet of flat steel would be coming through the port of Seattle with no adjustment. So 24 hours later, they've got the same carbon tax. And then the whole world's following, because if you're doing business anywhere in the world, you're doing business with America and China. So then 8 billion people start seeing the true cost of the burning of fossil fuels. The economic problem has been fixed. 8 billion people go to their grocery store and they're choosing between the paper plates and the plastic plates. Mm-hmm. Paper's up a little bit because, chainsaw gas and carbon tax in that. But the plastic plates, boy, they're up. That's all petroleum, all natural gas all the time. Now here in America, you're that one at the McDonald's with a bigger paycheck in her pocket, even though she's been working a second or third job. We've reduced her payroll taxes. She's at the grocery store after this, and she's deciding between the paper and the plastic. Well, we're for freedom at republican.org. If she just likes the plastic plates, go ahead and buy them. But if she's cheap like me, she's going to pick up the paper. And that's going to happen on every shelf in the store. There's going to be some cleaner, greener, renewable thing that's cheaper relative to the dirty stuff that's simply been made accountable. Mm-hmm. And that's going to happen around the world. And so free enterprise is then delivering innovation at speed and scale because we fixed the problem of economics. Give me an amen and I'll stop preaching.
No. Speaking of preaching, here's my next question, because I think again, as the conservative Catholic in this group, I think you're onto something. Do you think that there's an opportunity for religious leaders to lead on climate change from a biblical and a moral perspective instead of a religious or instead of a political one?
I hope so. I pray so. When I was tossed out of Congress, I was about to say when I was leaving Congress, actually when I was tossed out of Congress, I could have talked about national security, but my only career regret is never serving in the military. And so other people can do that better. So we ended up under this sort of in general economics and political philosophy kind of sign. But when the question comes from the faith frame, I love to go there. Because that's who I am. That's where I come from, and it's just amazing the dignity that God gives the human soul. He says that we're co-creators with Him, and we're to tend the garden. And so you would hope that at some point, particularly evangelicals within the Republican base, would come to understand that, hey, really, we really need to get in on this thing because this is the role that we should be fulfilling. I don't know, Jolene, how you feel about Laudato Si. I can tell you that the day that it came out, I was in New York City with my Jewish friend who printed out the Pope's encyclical and gave it to this sort of evangelical Episcopalian. And so the both of us read it, and I loved it. Now, I had a friend at the University of Chicago who said the Pope was a Marxist in what he'd written. Well, I think that what that guy, the economist at the University of Chicago, was missing is the Pope was talking about a kingdom of a different world. Yeah. And you've got to give him he's doing exactly what he should be doing, is talking about the kingdom of the heart and the soul. He wasn't talking about economics. If you want to talk in the faith frame, it's so clear that we have this responsibility as co-creators with God to tend this garden. And then it also gets into, especially for conservatives, people, of political conservatism, quite often it's this thing about accountability. And so the thought that we just get away with dumping into the trash dump of the sky should just rankle.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, make people accountable. And then watch good things happen when people are accountable.
Yeah, that we are to be stewards of this earth that God gave us. And are you going to leave it better than the way we found it?
Yeah, or are you gonna poop the nest? Is basically what we're doing is pooping the nest. It's really a bad idea. Yeah, we think there's a tremendous opportunity with people of faith, and so, I had a Harvard professor one time say to me, "A shame that the Bible doesn't say anything about the environment." And I'm afraid he read the thought bubble out of my head, which is, have you read it? It's like it's replete in Scripture. Psalm 19: the heavens declare the glory of God; the skies proclaim the work of His hands. I mean, it's everywhere in Scripture. Mm-hmm. This idea that we see God in the creation itself.
It's interesting because I am not a person of faith, and I grew up, just so you know, Bob, I have a Jewish father, a Christian mother. I was raised Californian, which was like loose.
California, yes.
All the things. I did all the holidays, but no real faith. I mean, I believe in, I don't know what I actually believe. But all to say that I'm on board. Liberal Democrat, I'm on board. And when I've seen, I went, scoured your website, and I was like, and this is going to be a clunky question because I've been thinking about this so much. It seems that your foundation is catered towards the conservative, to have a space for the conservative to go that believes in climate advocacy. And I was looking at it going, but I want to be there too. What is your dream with Republic EN? Like, what do you want for your organization?
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to bring America together and lead the world to solutions. And it may sound a little bit strange.
I'm with you. Amen. Over here.
But it may sound strange sitting under this sign called Republic EN, and obvious intentional misspelling of Republican and the red and everything. I mean, it could be that we're doing it all wrong. But our theory is conservatives need to hear it in their own language. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, the climate conversation has mostly been conducted in the language of the left. I got a friend, Dan Kahan at Yale. He teaches law and psychology. His research shows that leftist-center people are communitarian egalitarians. They focus on the community and the whole community doing well, and they particularly focused on fairness. So they're communitarian egalitarians. Mm-hmm. He says right-of-center people are hierarchical individualists. They believe in working through a chain of command, so they're hierarchical. Mm-hmm. They're individualists. They believe in individual effort and reward. And so if you think about it, there's very different language between those two communities. Communitarian and egalitarian, you can say, well, the whole community is going to do well, and we're going to solve this climate change thing. Meanwhile, the hierarchical individualist needs to know, how it is that they're going to get the gold star in the class. They have to answer the question, what did you do in the war, Daddy? I mean, they've got to have an answer to that. And so we come to them in our natural language, which is hierarchical individualist language. Remember I was just talking about how we're going to make money selling this better stuff around the world. Capitalism is that system not to be repented of in climate change, but rather that system in a fallen world where you make money by serving other people. You serve them well, you make lots of money. And so that's what we talk about. It's not about departing from capitalism. Capitalism is going to be the salvation of this thing, because it's going to be people selling these better products once we fix the economics. And so, but Nicole, you're onto something that here's what we typically say to people if they, like I was in Hartsville, South Carolina, as I mentioned earlier, and that same day I was speaking at Rotary Club, and afterwards this woman came up to me and she said, I'm a liberal, but I sure do like what you were saying. Can I have one of your cards? I said, yes. And she said, I can't wait to give it to my conservative family members. I said, oh, that's exactly what we want you to do, is just to let them know that we exist, right? And so we're glad for that to happen. But also, I should tell you this, that if our solution that we talk about a lot sounds familiar to you, Nicole, we put on a price on carbon dioxide, we cut payroll taxes, we apply the same tax to imports so we get the whole world in on it. If that sounds familiar, it might be because it's the same thing that Al Gore has been for about 30 years. I asked him several years ago if I could keep on saying that. He said, hold up, Bob. If you're talking a low, and I said, no, sir, I'm talking a substantial carbon tax that's steadily rising, paired with a reduction of payroll tax applied at our borders. He said, yeah, fine then. You can tell people what you're for at republican.org. It's the same thing I've been for about 30 years. And so if we could get through this terrible moment in American politics, where the only thing that can make me feel better about my miserable existence is if my opponent is writhing in agony on the floor. And if I could get to the place of saying, well, it's okay that Al is smiling while we're smiling. He's, we can do this. We can actually bring America together. And that's why, what your show is doing is so great, is that, is to help get through this terrible moment where we've got to have the other people writhing in agony.
Yes.
No kidding. Bob, do you think it is harder to change people's minds or for them to admit that they've changed it?
Oh, what a great question, Jolene.
Isn't it? She's good at that stuff.
Yeah. I believe there's a very deep reservoir of grace to which I can repair. That's because I believe in a very big cross that was redeeming the whole world, not just my personal fire insurance policy, And because that, I think it's a lot of grace that's available. And therefore, I can admit to being wrong those first 6 years. It's also true that I've got a community of support, which is, my son, my wife, my 4 daughters, my dear friend Scott, the Aussie climate scientist. I was surrounded by them and their love. I'm able to say, yeah, I was wrong those 6 years. And I was just, so now I'm going to try to be, corrected. But I think you're onto something, Jolene. We can't expect everybody to know of that deep reservoir of grace and to be surrounded by a community of love. They're not necessarily.
Yeah.
And so what we probably need to give them space to do is just come around and say, now I see something. I was concerned about how we could get the world in on this thing, but now that you've answered that, I can see how maybe this would work. In other words, don't expect them to do what I did. And that's not necessary that they do what I did.
And I think we see that because we see that in so much of our whole political climate. But everybody, we've talked about so much on this show before, everybody has to, dig their heels in for their team and say, nope, I believe this because my team told me to believe this. And so it's so hard, to your point, to give that grace and say, wait, I might have screwed up on that.
And if someone says I might have screwed up, because liberals are absolutely guilty of this. Liberals, yes, I'm saying this. We aren't very nice. Like, that's part of the issue, is like, if someone has the courage and the vulnerability to say, I think I might be thinking differently about something, liberals tend to be like, see, I told you, or why didn't you think right? And so then it's like, how we just need to be kinder and filled with grace and allow ourselves to grow and change.
Yeah.
And maybe you weren't wrong, Bob. Maybe it was just different, right? We just learned different. Or you were ready at the time that you were ready to go on that, to learn, to meet Scott and have that spiritual awakening at the Reef. Like, you were ready to listen.
I was pretty clearly wrong before, because I was making a political calculation. Thank you for the grace that you tried to extend. But let me tell you,
you're welcome. You're like, that's fine.
I was pretty much wrong before. To this question about Jolene, about whether it's easy, which is how you pull this off, is informed by a friend of ours who got twins, and they like 18-year-old twins. And they found their son kneeling in a cathedral that they were looking. They were on a tourist, and that was atypical for him. And so, what do they do as a parent? They say to him, "So, what were you doing over there?" No, they decided, just don't say anything. Just let him come to us later about that. In other words, don't, and that's, I think, what we've got to do about climate, is we can't say to the Republican office holder, okay, dum-dum, come on out and tell us how dumb you were. You know, we don't do that. What we want to do is we want to say, just come along. We can show you an answer. So it's basically, don't shine a spotlight on them while they're doing this change, just like don't shine the spotlight on the 18-year-old that was praying in the cathedral. Just wait for him to tell you about it later, about why he was, what he had going on there. We just need to give people space to come around and, like, say, hear it in their own language, and then they can say, yeah, this is who we are. I'm not being cut off from my tribe.
Bob, do you think that there's hope?
This is going to sound rather crass, I guess, but the hope is this: economic realities overwhelm shaky ideologies.
100%.
And this hoaxerism thing, it is a doggone shaky ideology. I mean, it is contrary to the science, and it is contrary to the economic realities. Do you know that recently, this had been we're talking in May, in April, there's a report in the Financial Times that there's a Chinese car company that now has a 900-mile car on a 6 to 7 minute charge.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
900 miles.
Is it wrong that I'd like to buy that car?
No, and it's why Ford Motor Company realizes it doesn't matter that the $7,500 credit is going away in America. They are after creating a $30,000 platform for an EV that they can try to compete with these Chinese companies. BYD currently has a car that will go 300 miles on a 5-minute charge. Ford says they've got to get down to that level, because they're a worldwide company. We're having, this is the economic reality that we're facing. We're in the midst of an energy transformation. And it is a race not unlike the race that Sputnik set off when the Soviets, both of you are too young to remember this, and I was barely old enough to remember, but the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, and they were the first in space. And President Kennedy went to Rice University in September of 1962, the famous moonshot speech, and he admitted that we were behind. No matter, we're going to make up. And that's where we are right now. We are behind China in a race to repower our lives. And we can either choose to double down on burning rocks and stuff out of the ground, or we can be the people that say, no, we see you. And we're going to do those batteries, and we're going to figure out how to do the small modular nuclear reactors, and we're going to do the better batteries, and we're going to do the better solar and the better wind, and we're going to make it so that we can repower our lives. And, by the way, so we can say to those folks in the Middle East, see if you can drink that stuff. We just don't need you like we used to.
Aren't we seeing that right now? I mean, we're in this whole, Strait of Hormuz situation. We're seeing how dependent, the entire world is on this, and how this one country, this one regime can affect the entire world.
Yeah, and of course, some people would say, they'd try to correct you and me, and they'd say, well, America has enough of its own oil. We do.
Yep.
We do.
Yep.
Here's the problem. It's a worldwide market for oil. And those people that are drilling it here will sell it wherever the highest price is. And so when you cut off 20% of the world's supply through the Straits of Hormuz, the price goes up worldwide. So we are all dependent on that little stretch of waterway. Mm-hmm. It's in our national security interest to say to them, we just don't need you like we used to. Here's a copy of our Constitution in your language. Study it if you like. You just won't be seeing us very much. That's really independence for America. That's where we build our national security, is by getting away from this stuff.
And that's a conservative thought.
The reality is that economic reality is going to overwhelm this shaky ideology. And so that's my hope. And I think also people will maybe, I hope at a higher level, that people start realizing, there's no reason to see a Democrat as my enemy. We've got enemies in the world, but a Democrat is not one of them for me. That's going to take a little bit more work, I think, at really sort of a spiritual level, I think, to get to the place of saying, listen, we're all after the same things. We just got different ways to get there. But on this one, the climate thing, you can actually come to agreement pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This has been so great, Bob.
Yeah.
So clear. So I don't know what person wouldn't agree with this, honestly. It doesn't matter what side you're on. When you go speak to people, do you speak to liberals and liberals and conservatives together, or is it just mostly the conservative audience?
We really want to speak mostly to conservatives. So if, I keep referencing earlier this week, being in Darlington County, South Carolina, I spoke to a Rotary Club. I met with some farmers from the Farm Bureau, and then I spoke to the Republican Party that night. That's a good day for us because we're talking to right of center folks. Yeah. But if I end up, in front of an audience with left of center folks in it, then they can help us by sharing us with their friends and family members who happen to be conservative.
Yeah, and also, Bob, I think what I've learned today is I think more liberals should listen to you because the way you speak about it and the way you talk about the language, that would help us either understand what we're saying or how we're saying it isn't helping. And that, again, liberals, we need to understand that the Republican Party is not our enemy. These are human beings that have wants and needs and also believe in climate change.
Yeah, and it's welcome them to the party, welcome to the conversation. If I'm in front of a group of liberals, what I invariably implore them to do is please don't see climate change as too good of a crisis to waste. Too many liberals think everybody agrees on climate. Let's get a solution where we put a whole bunch of goodies on the wagon that we want, living wage and union organizing or whatever, load up the wagon with all that stuff. Well, what I tell them is, please notice that wagon is sinking in the muck. You cannot get it across the finish line. Please get the weight off the wagon. If you could just get this simple pricing mechanism done, we might be able to convince conservatives to listen to Milton Friedman. If he were still alive, he'd be saying this is the answer. And we might be able to get this across the finish line. Come back later for that union organizing thing. Come back later for that living wage thing. Please don't overload the wagon because we've got to get this done. This one has a time fuse on it, and we need to head off the worst of the damage. You know, the city of Charleston, South Carolina right now is in the process of planning a $1 billion, that's billion with a B, $1 billion seawall and pumping system to keep the high tide out. That's one city in one state on one of our coasts.
Wow.
We need to head off the water coming up rather than try to pump it all out once it's come up. Really, we're in a race. We're in a race on climate. We're also in a race to repower our lives with the Chinese. And
AI is not helping.
Yeah, and there are good things that can come from this. I mean, really good things like improved national security. And something that we're trying out a little bit is talking not so much about climate change, but climate stability. Is just talking about the goal of climate stability and hoping that people can see that as something we should move toward is stability.
Interesting stuff, Bob. Thank you so much. Nicole?
Yes. Would you like
Do you want to talk about your good
Yes.
Good for
Do you have a good
soul?
for the soul, Bob, for us?
I mentioned it earlier. I can tell you, when I get discouraged in this business
Yeah.
about working on climate, I go watch the Moonshot speech. If you haven't seen it, it's 17 minutes of pure American exceptionalism. And I, a Republican, should be embarrassed to say this, but President Kennedy, the Democrat, does it better than any Republican has ever done it. You know, he admits that some of the materials needed in the spacecraft hadn't been invented yet. No matter, we're going to the moon before the decade is out. You know, when leaders are optimistic, they're saying they believe in the people they represent. And what he was obviously expressing there at Rice University in September of 1962 is amazing optimism with the American people and belief in our abilities. And we did it. And so I watch it a lot because there are discouraging moments. I'll tell you, I cry every time. And of the views that you'll see at either Kennedy Library or NASA, they both have it on their site, I'm about 25% of the views. Well,
I will put it in the I will put it in the show notes for all of us to be able to watch it because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it really is
great.
amazing.
And side note, my mom graduated from Rice in 1962.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? In 62,
Cool.
so she
In
might have
62.
been there.
She might have been there.
She might have been at the
there.
speech.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you watch the speech, you got to notice this, too. You know how now we have these American flags, and they're like 8 of them behind the president, and they're like stretch out like this?
Yeah.
It looks so silly. In September of 62, there was one flag, and it almost hits him in the head. I mean, it's like
really?
flying around. It's like now we do presidential light and sound,
Yes.
and it's like
Yes.
this, you know, and it's all
Yeah.
staged.
Yeah.
Not then. It was just he was down in the field, and he's giving his speech, and the flag nearly hits him in the head. And it's just real.
Amazing.
And it's truly an amazing speech. I got to tell you one other thing. When the flight surgeon came from that mission, came by the science committee, I asked him, I said, is it true, you know, this is like an 85-year-old man at this point. I said, is it true we didn't know how deep the moon dust was? He grabbed me, he took me aside into the anteroom, and he said, we had absolutely no idea how deep the moon dust was. He said, those were my patients. I was monitoring their heartbeats. There was a real chance that Neil Armstrong was going to fly into his grave. And he said, we had no idea. He said, as God would have it, you know, the thrusters came on, it blew away a little bit of moon dust, and it landed. He said, Neil Armstrong turned off the rudimentary computer because he said, listen, I'm a test pilot, and if I'm flying into my grave, I'm flying myself. And so he landed it himself. And so that's what we did in 1969 on slide rules. The thing was designed on slide rules. And for some of your viewers, I'll have to tell them, go to a museum and you'll see what a slide rule is.
You'll know what a slide rule is.
Yeah,
I'll put that in the show notes too.
But now in your phone, you have way more computing capacity than they had for that mission.
Wow.
And so we did it. We
That is
can do
amazing.
this thing about winning this repowering our lives race. We can stop burning stuff out of the rocks and stuff out of the ground, and we can say the Middle East, get lost, and we can or figure out how to run your lives better. And we can create a lot of wealth and opportunity and jobs here in America and really solve this thing. No,
That's
some of the
amazing.
damage is baked in,
Love it.
but we can head off the worst of it, and that's really pretty exciting.
Okay, so now at the end of our podcast, Nicole and I always play a game of Would You Rather. And so I've got a Would You Rather question for you. Would you rather be remembered as someone who changed people's minds or someone who changed people's tones of their conversations?
Oh, you're going to find out my weakness here, I think. You see, it'd be more noble to change their tone, but I think I really want to change their minds. So,
That's honest. I like it. It's honest.
Sorry, I'm not being very noble there, but yeah, I wanted to change their minds.
We love an honest man, that's okay.
We love it. That's great.
Do you have a Would You Rather for us?
Would you rather that we solve this? Well, I keep on coming up with the just obvious ones, like what's the time frame here, about whether we solve this before we're at crisis or do we want to wait till we're at crisis? I guess there's an obvious answer to that, isn't there?
Right. Yeah.
That's really where, and we really are getting near the crisis point. But too many people, I think, want to wait until it's just really so totally too late. That's what you want to avoid. But anyway, I don't know.
Well, we really appreciate this conversation,
do.
Bob. I think that this was, we hope it's enlightening for all of our viewers and listeners. And like we say all the time, we're not here to change anybody's mind, but to have open conversations that with curiosity and respect. And you've certainly proved that with the work that you're doing at Republic EN. So thank you.
And if you want to go to Bob's website, it is republicen.org. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thanks for having me.
We've Got to Talk is produced across the world by the wildly talented, creative, and hilarious team at Bambi Media. Our theme song is Jump Jive Swing by Space Train Unlimited. Thank you so much for listening, and join us every week for another episode of We've Got to Talk.